Hello and welcome to the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US, a podcast in which we explore the mind-bending world of global supply chain, covering topics such as automation, innovation, unique identity, and more. I'm your co-host, Reed.
And I'm Liz.
And welcome to the show.
Today we'll be chatting with Matthew Wright, who is the founder and CEO of Specright. And he'll talk to us about how the packaging industry had so much opportunity for efficiency and so many data challenges that he wrote a book about it, The Evolution of Products and Packaging. I was so very excited to talk to Matthew. You'll hear it in the podcast. I am a geek for packaging, and it was just such a pleasure to speak with him. He talked about how packaging has evolved and how he has experienced packaging from an industrial, from a corporate, and an entrepreneurial perspective, and how there were opportunities to bring packaging and product development together. He talked about the importance of packaging to how consumers connect with their products and how that packaging can bring product information to life for them, just in that human readable way. And he talked about how primary, secondary, and tertiary packaging play a role in the supply chain. Reed and I had a blast chatting with Matthew, and we really hope you enjoy this episode. Matthew, we're so excited to have you today. Just let's jump in. Tell us briefly about yourself and how Specright came to be.
Yeah, certainly. I'd love to share a little bit about my background. It's all industrial. I grew up in the packaging business. I was just thinking, I typically say 20 years. I think I've been saying that for 5 years. So somewhere around 25 years, probably be a little more accurate. It's funny how we want that clock to go the other way. But really enjoyed my career. I had a chance to kind of grow up through big, conglomerate companies like International Paper and Temple Inland, and do the corporate thing kind of from the ground up to a director level and vice president. And then ultimately had a chance to go and buy my own packaging company and grow that, and exited that. And then had a chance to start Specright about the same time, which I know we'll jump into, so we'll spend a lot of time on that. And so it's been kind of interesting. I had a chance to be a kind of a corporate career, my entrepreneurial own company, and then a startup. So I've got just had a great career so far.
Tell us a little bit about Specright and what you all do.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it really came from the origins of the years before that. And I know we'll dig a lot more into it. But one thing is, as a kid, I was always a very organized kid. I helped organize the house. I kept everything in order. You walked into my office, you still do today, and my desk is pretty clear. And so I'm always trying to figure out how to organize and keep things kind of clean. And, in the 20 years before I started Specright, when I was in the box business and packaging business, I just saw this insane amount of disorganization, which we'll jump into. And so Specright is a specification data management company. So we'll talk about it, pioneered. We're a category creator about managing your specifications with one common language on a platform to get these outcomes. But that really came from, and I've shared a lot of great stories from the book, a lot of crazy things I just saw that really needed to be changed. And so I don't know if it was great or not, but I decided to step back and try to figure out how to solve this problem.
Yeah, so let's jump into that. You authored a book. It's called The Evolution of Products and Packaging. What motivated you to write this? What were the challenges you were seeing again and again where you're like, I need to write a book about this?
Well, I didn't realize some of the stories were that interesting, but I tell these stories at dinner time, generally to people around Specright that hadn't grown up in the industry, I'd say. And they'd be like, oh my God, that can't be true. Or, is that really true? And so, got enough coaching, said, you should just sit down and write a book about it and just share some fun stories. I don't know about you guys, but I like reading books that are kind of story based or bring life into the story. You read a lot of like technology or business books, I think, that are pretty flat because it just talks about, theoretical application. But I wanted to bring the life into it, like what happened that drove me to try to figure this out and ultimately bring a lot of great people to figure it out. And then ultimately, I think the real interesting part is packaging was really separate from product, when you talk about 20 years ago. And, the box always came whenever something needed to be shipped. It wasn't integral to the product. And today, I just arguably say you can't separate the package from the product. And ultimately, a lot of cases, the packaging probably is better than the product. And so it's just this historical perspective of these crazy stories and things that were going on in industry, and then how packaging product really came to grow to be one thing together.
Awesome.
So I think when we chatted earlier, I admitted this, but I have a packaging engineering degree, right? So I understand packaging. And that was, though I don't want to admit it, the 25 years ago when the product and the packaging were very separate.
Wait, that was 25? I thought you said it was 2.5 years ago.
Oh, Reed.
I don't remember seeing 25 years ago, but I think it was 10 years ago. But
Thank you, everybody, for making me feel better. But when you talk to like the everyday person and you start talking about packaging, you can almost see their eyes glaze over because it's that necessary evil maybe that is in a supply chain, but it makes things more streamlined and efficient. So I know it's super critical for how things work, but can you just talk to, like, put it into normal everyday language? Why is packaging important to the product now?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll step back though real quick. A funny story about eyes glazing over. My early days of fundraising in the VC community, there was a lot of people. I'd sit in meetings and they'd be drinking out of a bottle of water or something. They'd be like, "Is packaging really a big market?" I'm like, okay, I got to go. This is going to be a long story to explain to you. Obviously, that's completely changed today, and the conversations are different. But it is funny. It was hard, and even hiring people at the time. Come into technology. Some of the best technologists who sit there and try to explain how critical packaging is. And it's funny. And a side note, Iman loves a story. My CTO, phenomenal background, great guy, and he didn't really understand or believe me early on. And then he got on a call with a major automotive company like a week after he joined, and they're tracking packaging with sticky notes. He's like, "Oh my God, you're right. This is going to be big." And so to your point, you got to get people over that hump, that leap. Why is packaging so critical? And packaging, it's interesting, there's an article written about 10 years ago, talked about the 5 industries of the world that would shut the world down if one of them lights out. Packaging is one of them. Think about how would we get anything to anywhere? And so you realize it's kind of that unsung hero, as you mentioned, the necessary evil, which I spent 20 years trying to explain what it wasn't. It was something better, but it is. Yeah. And so it's kind of just this thing that goes on. It's like the freeway system. It just happens. We just jump on the freeways and drive around. But God forbid the freeway system shuts down, we realize how important it is, right? So packaging is the same thing. And the criticality of packaging, which was really, I think, gotten closer and make it more relevant, is it's really impactful to sustainability, which I think is on everybody's minds today. And it's really impactful to supply chain and supply chain challenges. You look at, through the pandemic, as one product was readily easy to get and one wasn't, it was typically driven from packaging. It wasn't the core product that was causing the problem. It wasn't the stuff in the package. It was the package was hard to get delivered to the right machines and et cetera. So it became really critical when the light was shown on kind of the manufacturing supply chain challenges that the world has, really, quite frankly. And so I think, and then as consumers, it's funny, I always say, I don't know if we're just getting smarter as we go along or not, but apparently 20 years ago, people didn't really care what's in their product, but now we do, and we should have, 20 years ago. But the packaging is also a great communicator of how sustainable something is, or what's in the product, or how you should feel about the product. And so, again, it's that really deep connection now between packaging and product, which I think is going to raise it to the consumer's awareness. I always say, 20 years ago, you could have put something in a box and shipped it somewhere. Somebody at the store would take it off, put it on the shelf, and the relationship with that package never was with the consumer. Today, that's just totally different as we're grabbing that package today and taking it home with us.
When you refer to packaging, is it primary packaging of the product, like that bottle, or do you also start talking about secondary and tertiary packaging, like pallets too? Because when you start talking about shortages of packaging, even the pallets that carry that primary packaging have shortages and cause issues. Produce had it during the pandemic. So I just want to get your thoughts on that too.
Oh, completely. No. All 3 categories are critical to the supply chain. Again, kind of going back to the world was shut down without packaging. You could say any one of those 3, it would shut the world down. You have to have the tertiary to get the product to market. Tertiary is a great, real quick example of spec management. And the criticality, if you really look at kind of the core pallet functions, there's a very limited scope and number of pallets. And so the vision of spec management is that we would have those 6 to 8 dominant pallet specs in the system and people would consume those, versus today, I guarantee there's hundreds of thousands of versions on people's desktops, file folders, et cetera. So that's just one quick example of the difference that I look at when I talk about organization and spec management. Pallets is a great example, shrink film, other tertiary products. So it's all critical. I think the consumer is becoming more aware, obviously, of the primary and the secondary to some degree. So.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, well, you both just blew my mind. I wasn't even thinking along the tertiary or secondary market of packaging, but you crystallized it real fast for me right there with supply chain. I was thinking more along the lines of the consumer and behaviors, and you hit upon sustainability, but then there's also this experience piece too, right? But then there's beyond the experience, it's the experience of industry and how do things flow in and flow out and how can it be fast and efficient and all these types of things on it. I'd like to get your perspective on it. I think of sustainability, and last night I just had to laugh and my wife had a food container out and she's like, oh, that goes in recycling. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. And she's like, what do you mean? It has recycling on it. And I'm like, grab your phone. We put the camera on it. We enlarged it. And it says, product is available for reuse after cleaning. Discard lid. It's not recyclable, you know? So like there's this mixed images that go on out there too. So what are some things that you're seeing, you know, from consumer behavior that's positive or negative, and just shed some light?
Yeah, no, actually step back. I think you brought up another good point before we jump to that, which I think does impact sustainability ultimately, is there's this emotional connection with product that we make when we consume it. And I think the two industries that have done an amazing job with that through packaging is the beverage industry, or the wine industry does a real good job of connecting, you know, emotion with consumption of product. And so I think that's always been probably one of the best leading examples of how you create that connection. The cosmetic industry obviously is very good at creating the packaging relationship to the product. And so that's important because as you start to peel the onion back of the bigger topics of sustainability, we have to figure out how to do that while still keeping this emotional connection with product. We still have to do it while we're being cost effective, which I think all that's possible. The challenge of sustainability, I'll tell you the challenges, which we all know, is the definition, right? And so the criticality of the definition, just like you and your wife are having that dialogue and debate, we all have those, is really getting, I think, clarity. And clarity for me is going to be driven through data. And so you kind of did it in your example there where you zoomed in closer and kind of read it. But, you know, the ability in anywhere in the globe, any state, any country, to really understand, because the definition might be slightly different based upon the end of life, you know, ability to get rid of product. And so I think data is going to drive a lot of those decisions, not only what do you do with what you got, but how do you do it better? What's interesting, we did a survey 3 years ago about sustainability and the state of sustainability. And at that time, 32% of the respondents said there's a company budget for sustainability. Today, we just did the survey and it's 80%. So we see this trend from a company, which is driven by people and consumers, to do the investing they need to do the investigation, to do the research, and start to try to understand what does sustainability mean for them and their product. So I think that the trends are all positive. There's this, I think just questioning inquiries is a first step to figuring stuff out. I think there's a lot of noise that needs to be kind of quieted down and just focus on data and facts. And I see that trend starting to come out through some of the research we're doing. And the consumer, I think, is really struggling to figure out what's right and what's wrong. Again, so that's the challenge that we have ahead of us. We did a study of about 50 of the major companies, and what we found is kind of the core beliefs in sustainability are very similar, and then there's a lot of outliers that kind of go around that. So that's what I see from an industry perspective. I think consumers, just to you and your wife's example was a perfect one. They just want to know what it is and then make decisions from there. And we see more money being pushed towards trying to solve these complex problems or questions.
You touched on the importance of data and the definition of sustainability, recyclability even. What is it? Why is it so very critical? Why is that data? I mean, because I could tell you what my definition of sustainability is, right? But you did talk about that data. Why is that so important to have transparency to the consumer?
Yeah, and one thing, and I'll get to the data side in a minute, one thing we as a company are steadfast on is we're not going to define sustainability. We're going to empower those that have defined it to be to get something done, right? That's my whole passion is, let's quit talking, let's get something done. You tell me, as a company, what's your definition of sustainability, and I'll tell you how you're doing against that. And then, I think sustainability is going to ebb and flow. I don't think we know what that means in 2 years from now or 3 years from now, as more technologies are invented. And so data is critical because I always say, and it comes across kind of tough, but you can't be sustainable if you don't know what you got. I mean, if you don't know where you're at today, it's like going on a trip. Like if you don't know where you're at today, how are you going to find where you're going, right? And so data is all the DNA level of product. How much, what type of resin, how much resin, what type of inks, how much inks, where are you using it? Where is it coming from? Where's it going to? These are all really critical data points, and it's a digitization of data that we always talk about as this kind of a 4-step process. Digitization is the first step, and getting it in a common language that can be consumed by all. I use the story over and over again, but if you put 10 people in a conference room to solve a complex problem and you have 10 different languages, it's going to take you a while to get anywhere, right? If you put everybody that can speak one language, 10 smart people in the room, you're going to solve the problem probably really fast. And so data is no different. Data needs to be treated in a common way, a common platform, a common language. And back to the 20 years, I watched these companies, even internal to companies, struggle for years to try to create what everybody would agree was a data set. And so what you ended up having is you had everybody working off kind of their own little version of their data. And how in the world are you ever going to be sustainable or change your product or become predictive to the future if you don't have that fundamental done right? So that's why I think data is the most critical thing to sustainability. And data not, we see a lot of sustainability information out there, but I'm talking about data at the product level, product and packaging level.
Yeah, I was actually going to lean into that a little bit more. I'm going to tweak my original question here just a little bit, but data is super important, but it's not just the data. It's having good business quality. It's master data management. So like your example of the same language is throw 10 experts in the room and none of them speak the same language. You're going to spend a lot of wasted time trying to learn to communicate. I mean, if they're speaking a different language and writing a different language, how are they going to get there? They could be the smartest people with all the answers. Whereas, if we're all speaking that same language. So I'd like to know your thoughts on not just the data, but standardizing data, using standards. Standards is standards for technology, standards like GS1 standards, standards like IEEE type standards for, IP protocol, those types of things. So it's kind of this data, standards, and technology. Your thoughts on all of those together, because you said your first step is digitization, but even digitization means something different to everybody.
It's funny, and you think about it, what we've created, and we were just talking about this the other day, what we've created because of the way we've done it historically is we created everything kind of project-based. Like, okay, we're going to go save money. Okay, then let's throw a lot of people at it, and let's all gather information, and it's a project. And sustainability, I think in a lot of companies' cases, is still looked at as a project. It's not a project. It's an ongoing evolution of time. And to your point, I'm always kind of self-effacing of our company, but it took us a year to create the first standard template for a corrugated shipper. I don't know if we're taking long lunches. I don't know what we were doing. It seems so simple today. But I remember these pictures of us in whiteboarding and all this. And today that template would take us 2 minutes to put together, right? And so to your point, nobody had really sat back and said, if we're going to create something that works for everybody for a corrugated shipper, what does that template and what's that language look like? Because again, companies have tried, and consultants have tried, everybody's tried and kind of came up short. And to your point, when you have this third party create this template, it really sets upon the opportunity to talk about what's not there or something versus, no, mine's better or mine's better. And so it really created, I think, not just the standardization, which is what we've done for, I think there's over 50 different version templates today, but the standard language, how you look at it, and then ultimately, you can come in and do a little configuration here and there for the word you may want to use, but you have that core data set all structured correctly, so you can pull that data and play with it as you would with everybody. And so, yeah, standardization is as critical as digitization. It's really the first step. I just looked at, we did the standardization first. Now companies need to do the digitizing, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the other thing that was an opportunity for me, which is kind of dispelling the myths, I think having the chance to work in the automotive sector, and the cosmetic sector, and the food and bev sector, and the pharma sector, I got a chance to see kind of everything being made from, I say chicken processed to missiles made.
Right.
I've kind of not been a factory. I think I counted, and I've been in, close to 400 factories in my life. So I've kind of seen it all made, and that's not from a bragging standpoint. What I realized when I stepped back is it's all the same data. It may be used for different purposes, or it may be slightly configured for different languaging for industries, but it's really the same data for all these things. And I think that's the standard, because a lot of industries, you might have a pharma standard come out, or you might have a cosmetic standard come out, but it's really all the same. And so we're today in all these verticals because the data standardization, to your points, happened. Now we're talking about companies digitizing, and I'll click through that because you asked about that. So I think the challenge of the digitization is, where's the data coming? We're seeing data coming from, amazing places that would blow your mind, but 5, 6, 7 different data sources, bringing that data in to then standardize it, clean it up, looking for anomalies, make sure the data is clean coming in. And with technology, a lot of that's pretty, I wouldn't say it's easy today. The mapping's a little difficult, but the actual functioning of that, we created this great MSU, it'll grow to other schools, Spec Squad, that does that part-time out of academia. We're really big in academia. And so there's ways through technology and through kind of gig resourcing to solve the digitization problem today. So,
excellent.
A lot there, but you had a lot of good points in there.
Yeah, there is a lot there. There's way too much there. I almost think that we're at the point where we need to have more cross-industry agreements instead of like, this is just healthcare, this is just pharmaceutical, this is just food service. It's like, well, wait a second. I'm sending milk to all of you. I'm sending milk to all of you for different reasons. You're going to be using milk to make, pharmaceutical drugs. I'm just hypothetically throwing that out there. Or, milk's going for your food service versus your grocery. To your point, it's the same product. It may be used 1,000 different ways, but it's the same product. But each industry is requiring different types of data points.
Mm-hmm. So we are heading towards, and we'll be tremendously efficient at new product development, sustainable new product development, quality, all these things. When we get to that, what I call the one spec world, where we really narrow all this down. It's funny. We always have great interns. So one of the intern projects last 2 summers ago was to go out and do study on water specs. If you think about the core functional product of the world, right, water, and they were blown away with how varied the definition of a water spec is around municipalities and companies. And so my vision is we got to standardize that data down to your point, and then let everybody consume that data to do what they need to do with it.
Have that MVP there. Yeah.
So,
one of the things I remember when we had chatted before is you talking about the difference, and I think this is kind of a good segue into it. If I'm wrong, then just tell me. Tell me about the difference from your perspective on portals and networks, because that's a lot of different information coming in, right? Versus like one by one by one.
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say, I would think, coming from the supplier life, that when you hear the word portal, your immediate reaction is negative. Like, oh my God, another portal. I got to one-way directionally share information. So I've lived the life of portals, which is very dead data typically. Obviously, there's probably examples where it's not. So to me, a portal is a definition of a one-dimensional relationship. So, hey, I'm a company and I need to know what's in this product. And so load that in my portal, or I want to know what the price of this product line is, or whatever it is, right? So it's typically a one-dimensional or one-directional relationship. And you just had mentioned it before. We're talking about the value of this data. Either we standardize it, then we digitize it, we operationalize it, map it, which we can talk about. Then we network the data. And so to that point is, the network is how you share data that is good for everybody, or parts of data that's good for everybody. And so to me, a network is a living organism. Like it's fluid. It's sharing information. It's doing collaboration. It's using one spec to create multiple products. And I liken it. we have a joke in the office. Simon calls it the sushi tray. I call it the freeway system. But whatever it is, the network is where you get on to get from point A to point B and share that passageway. And so to me, portals in the definition are kind of a dead technology, and networks are really how we're going to share data. It's going to be bilateral, unilateral information sharing. And what's great, I think that sparks a little concern in some people's heads. But today, again, technology is so strong at provisioning, keeping data that you want secret and sharing other data. And so I think today is the right time to really be talking about networks and the fluidity of data on the network. So real excited. We're in beta right now with our network product with Bright Future Foods, which is an innovative arm of Post all about sustainable carbon neutral footprint packaging product. And so they're in it with a couple others, and it's really exciting to start to see kind of that data sharing on the network.
Are you seeing other sustainability trends that are peaking right now, or, new creative ideas? I mean, we've seen that what was it when we were talking about the other day, Liz? It was like those cocktails that they have liquor in them, but cocktails that were in pods, but you could actually eat them. So this is this new packaging ways. But I mean, I think that was a little bit more of a clickbait type thing. But Matthew, are there other sustainability packaging trends that are significant right now that's worth mentioning to our viewers?
Yeah, I think before we jump into product, I think just again awareness. I'm sitting on a academic advisory board for a big college that's developing a master's degree of packaging sustainability. The first thing is we got to start to define. It's funny, I was on a call. We're talking about liquor packaging, but I was on a call and it's a broad scope industry group and trying to define. First of all, is what do we teach? How do you how do you put your arms around that? And then what's trying to keep out of the answers more. Here's the providing of data. So I think the fact that we're at that level, that we're really thinking through how to educate, how to train the next generation. I think the easiest thing about that, I think every one of us on this call would agree that when that program launches, which unfortunately for academia takes a while, but when that program launches, it's going to be oversold. I mean, it's such a desired need from a consumption for company standpoint. So I think more and more we're starting to see awareness around training, educating, what that means. And then from product, and to your point, there's some really kind of interesting and somewhat cool and some funky and some functional, some not. I think that, again, and I hate to keep harping it, but I think once we get the data correct and it's digitized, what's really cool, and this is what I talk about I've met some really great founders of sustainable products, is we could then quickly map, where does this thing over here work? And so you look at, millions and millions of specs, and one of the struggles that really new kind of leading edge sustainable products struggle with is, how do I find the connection? Where I know this works. It's a cool thing, to your point, maybe a little far out right now, but I have a consumable package that's a human can consume. And it's good for these types of products, and it doesn't work with these types of products, and it works for this kind of market. That's seconds of data, exchange, and say, hey, you over here, kind of maybe not as sustainable. There's a sustainable option. Do you want to take a look and look at what it looks like against each other? So again, that's where I think we go. I think right now the struggle is a lot of one-offs. I have some founders I know that have created sustainable products, and they go through testing and trials and failures and then reboots, and it's just this really slow process. When in fact we could greatly shrink that timeline and then loop in. We're part of we built a PackSite, which is ISTA, International Safe Transit Association's testing platform. So you loop in this testing with this data with this goal, and then you let the data start to play, and then you avail that data relationship to really smart people to do really creative things and find out how we can get better, more sustainable products to market in that definition. So I think, again, education, data, awareness is going to help accelerate some of these things that are out there. There's a lot of smart people trying to develop cool products right now.
It's a lot. And
it is a lot.
Always,
it's exciting.
Complex. It's really cool. Data seems like something, again, maybe a necessary evil, kind of like packaging. But if you were going to give somebody advice. How do you get started in just the data management to enable all of these other things that we talked about, more sustainable packaging and smarter ways to communicate with each other about packaging? How do they get started?
Yeah, and the first step is, it's organizational readiness. There's a lot of great articles on this today about, digitization, and we're talking about before, is going on in kind of every industry around everything. And so there's this really, organizational readiness piece, which a company has to be, reflective on, typically create a champion around. That's what we've seen the great successes. Somebody has, the respect within an organization, perhaps has done something similar, has the authority to make decisions and build teams. Because what's cool about data is it also kills companies' silos. And I think most leadership's trying to get rid of these silos. Data is the equalizer, right? Data is the one that can kind of transcend all silos. So you need that change agent at a company to start with. And that's typically the only time we've seen a successful conversion, whether small or large, starts with a champion. The second thing is, and obviously for us, we've done it hundreds of times with really complex, everybody thinks they have a complex system more than somebody else. And the reality is, there are some that are worse than others, but we've kind of seen it all, from a global footprint and from stuff coming off of, Post-it notes to the most amazing pivot spreadsheets I've ever seen, which I measured one was 9 feet wide. So we've seen kind of everything that's out there. And so don't recreate the path, right? Just walk down somebody else's footsteps. There's a lot of champions willing to talk about it, say what their experience was, kind of the wins and losses. We did Spec Summit, which is really not about selling Specright. It's about bringing people together to kind of share about this common vision. And so I'd say, don't create your own path. The paths have been done before, a champion. And then to your point, the selling is really what happens when you do this. Quit doing projects. Here's the things that our team can start doing. There's an ROI to it. There's an ROI to sustainability. I really believe that we can make more sustainable products cheaper. And that's a counter belief. And so you got to have organizational readiness, champion to do it, follow in other people's footsteps. There's trusted experts, and really define, how the world will be different for you in the end. It's funny. I won't, doesn't matter what company, but I was at a major company and pitched and everybody bought into it, had a champion there. And somebody in the meeting said, I have one question. Can I print all this out and put it back in my files? I'm like, well, it's kind of not where we're trying to go here as a company, because we're trying to talk about light speed, product development and leading edge quality. And so it's back to that organizational readiness. You need a champion that can really keep people kind of in the right direction.
Yeah, I saw that person on that insurance commercial now, right? When you turn into your parents, right? Like, I printed this out off of your website.
Yep, exactly.
Well, we're kind of coming to time here, and Matthew, you've dropped a lot of great knowledge on us. The last couple of things, I took some notes, and we're going to recap here in a minute, but we always end with 2 questions, and I'm going to go with the first one, and this could be anything. It could be personal related or business related or industry related, but what is your favorite technology that you're using right now?
Yeah, you said using, so it threw me off a little bit. I'm just technology in the world right now. I'm fascinated, and I'll jump to me, but I'm fascinated with, I don't know if you've heard about the thing called the Line out of Saudi Arabia. It's a 110-mile city they're building that's going to house 9 million people with zero carbon footprint, et cetera. So fascinated with what's going on in the world of convergence of technologies to have a better human experience. So been studying a lot about that just from an interesting standpoint. For me, it's really simple. I still love my iPhone. It's amazing to me how we do so much so efficiently today from all the apps. And so it's kind of a generic answer, but that to me, I'm still amazed every day when I get up and see how we interact with technology today.
I was listening to the news about the spaceship that was supposed to launch, and
Artemis.
And this, right? And the amount of technology we have in our iPhones was more than they had when they went to the moon the first time. Is that
way more?
I mean, it's crazy that we're all walking around with this major computer in our pockets every day. It's amazing
they went on the spaceship with less technology, right?
That too.
Yeah. That went out to bid to the lowest bidder, right? Type of thing. But it does amaze me, the iPhone scenario, because, Star Trek, the whole flip phone type thing, Scotty beam me up type thing, to now where we're getting geolocation maps and social awareness and being able to, take a picture of a plant and it automatically tells you exactly what it is and if it's poisonous or not. I mean, it truly, truly is revolutionary. We are living through a revolution of information, just like we were taught with the Industrial Revolution when we were growing up. So, well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So our last question is, what blows your mind? What's out there in the world or something in your past, in your history, that was like, holy cow, I cannot believe this?
Well, it's what I live and breathe every day. And it's funny. I don't know if it's a compliment, but most people go, I can't believe this wasn't done before. Like, so meaning maybe I'm not that smart, but it's, but to me, it's fascinating that, and I think it's really hard for humans to conceive that all the data needed to make things is managed the way it is. And really, quite frankly, spec management and the concept of it really probably should have come before me. So to me, it's fascinating that we are allowing ourselves to engage in our business life with a lower level of technology than we do in our personal lives. And I'm going to be speaking about it at PAC Expo about what I call the double life of technology, and why we're okay with using the iPhone for all the amazing things we do. And then we come in and we're black screen or green screened at the office. It's just insanity to me.
Yeah, it is true. It's funny, when I started in corporate America in the 90s, I was always amazed by, like, wow, we have computers at work and we have email at work. And then I remembered when we got like video conferencing, and I was like, whoa, but it didn't take long. It was less than 10 years where it flipped. And what you have at home is better than what you have in the office or in some spaces. 100%. Well, Matthew, we really appreciate you spending the time with us today. You dropped some great knowledge. I just love your passion for this. And I love that folks like you are in the industry and in the business. And Liz, I need to tip my hat, my proverbial hat, to you, because you talk about packaging all the time and you're like, I know it's not sexy. I have to tell you, I'm a tech guy. I love technology and all that stuff. This was one of the most interesting conversations we've had in a long time, like the secondary packaging and tertiary packaging. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it just instantly hit me, and what we could do with sustainability and moving forward. And, as Matthew, as you said, we really don't have to create our own path. We can just walk the same path a little bit better, because we can walk it with sneakers or walk it with boots or put wheels on it and ride down that path. We need to do the same things. We just need to get better at it. And the data silos, oh my gosh, I've been living that in IT for years. It blows my mind how many companies will have 14 databases of the exact same data. It's the exact same data, but they're not sharing it across, groups. I'm just going to leave us with this, which was portals being one-dimensional, and then the networks and sushi trays. It's for sure. It's for sure.
I'm going to love that you picked up on that version, so I'll share that with him. But and I think what we heard, Liz, is now we're cool.
Great.
Oh, you guys are the coolest. You're the coolest. Well, Matthew, thank you for sharing with us today. It was greatly appreciated.
Thank you both. It's been great.
Hey. Thank you for joining the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US. If you enjoyed today's show, you can subscribe to our feed or explore more great episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share and follow us on social media. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.